The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship. And now, here are your co-hosts, Eve D., Bruce H., and the Monty'man.
Welcome aboard, and we got some new toys. We got this, and we still got this. And therefore, Inspector Gadget is alive and well. Yes, indeedy. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the Great Reality and Open Forum. This is the show that you have tuned into, and you may regret. Eve is here, and Bruce is here, and I am the Monty'man. And we are all together. How you guys doing? Hey, Eve, you're feeling better this week.
I am feeling better.
Yeah, you were sick.
Ooh, I was green.
You were. Poor Eve.
I'm getting ill looking at that pink thing hanging on your microphone.
So we have the pink horn of death sitting here, and maybe I'll take a shot of it and stick it on the YouTube version of the show. So if you're watching the YouTube version, that's probably what's popping up right now, is the pink horn of death. I know. I can't help myself. This week, speaking of helping yourself, one of the greatest ways to get out of yourself is to help others, right? And this week we're going to be talking about understanding step 12. Which starts out as having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And you hear me say it all the time. You can't have a spiritual awakening as a result of steps you haven't done. We try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs, right?
Right.
All our affairs. All of them. Every one of them, Bruce.
Why are you looking at me?
Every one, Bruce.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about that. Nancy Reagan passed away.
Yes, I saw something about that.
Yeah. Well, there's a marriage for the ages, huh? Wow, they were married for decades and decades and decades. Yeah. So our thoughts go out to families and friends of the Reagans. What a tremendous president. What a legacy.
He was a surprise.
Yeah, he was a surprise. And there was a lot of conservatives that did not like him in the beginning.
No, he was an actor.
Yeah, they did not like Yeah, what's new now, right? I mean, I don't know what's going on anymore. I just don't. Help. Anyway, so what's in the news? What's new? What's new in the news? Well, here's something cool. We officially will be starting the brand new broadcast on Mondays on March 14th, next Monday, or this Monday, I guess you could say, the brand new, all new Adult and Teen Challenge Good News Report. And what this is, folks, coming up, this is inspired by a man by the name of Mike Hodges. Mike Hodges was the, I'll just tell you. So Mike Hodges was the pioneer and the first executive director of Teen Challenge International Pacific Northwest. The centers here in the Pacific Northwest. Mike's spiritual journey began on his 29th birthday in 1972 when God spoke audibly, calling him to be a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Lord transformed Mike from a life of drug abuse and being functionally illiterate to a man on fire for God. He graduated from Bible college and pastored 2 successful churches in Oregon before pioneering the Teen Challenge ministry in the Pacific Northwest. Mike went on to serve 5 years as president of Teen Challenge USA at the national headquarters in Missouri. And Mike now lives in Lebanon, Oregon with his wonderful wife, Betty. And Mike and I used to tour all over Oregon, and he would preach, we would both sing, play guitar, and we, try to raise money for this wonderful nonprofit organization, which used to be called Teen Challenge. It's now Adult and Teen Challenge. And this show that we're doing, we're kind of resurrecting it. Mike did it for a number of years. He would sit in his office with a little cassette recorder, and he would record a testimony from a student at Teen Challenge and then send it over to the local radio station, and then they would play it once a week. And Mike has Parkinson's, and he's very, very sick. He's going through all sorts of treatment, and the Lord keeps giving him grace, and it's a marvelous thing. But pray for him. But Mike is a tremendous guy, and he's been on the show a couple of times here at the station. And in talking with the outreach coordinator at Teen Challenge Pacific Northwest Willamette campus in Shed, Oregon, just about 25 minutes from here, Kyle Thompson, we were discussing resurrecting the show. And we said, it's something that has crossed my mind a number of years ago, and I decided against it because our focus was a little different than it is today. But we decided, we prayed about it, and we had to jump through some hoops because there was copyright issues as far as logos and things like that. Teen Challenge is very careful, as well they should be. And everything got approved as of yesterday. Kyle Randleman, the executive director, contacted me yesterday and says, you are good to go. So we will be taping that show later today. It'll broadcast and debut on the 14th. And what we're going to be doing is sharing personal testimonies of guys who have come out of, and gals. Hopefully we're going to get some of the gals from the women's centers too, to share their experience, strength, and hope, and how God has brought them out of a world of drug and alcohol abuse and to his marvelous light.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and so they're going to be giving testimonies and sharing their stories. So that's going to be a hoot. That'll broadcast every Monday, updated every Monday. Yes, indeedy. So that's what's in the news. We will for Take 12 Radio. Lifeline Connections, the alumni event. It was a hoot. One of my sponsees and his wife, and then Roger McDermott, who was here last week, went up to Vancouver. And Chris Attaway and the gang up at Lifeline Connections put on a heck of a show again. Bob Raquel, recovery comedian, was up there. Lots of Little Caesars pizzas flying around the room. And the Exchange Church folks were up there. There was a whole bunch of people up there. The Family Afterwards program. I don't have time to list all the recovery-focused groups that were in attendance. But once again, a packed house. And shout out to Chris Attaway and all the folks at Lifeline Connections. You guys really do a bang-up job. Thank you so very much. If you'd like to listen to that broadcast, you can click on our archives link at take12radio.com, and it'll bring up the YouTube versions, and you'll see the Lifeline Connections show, and you can listen to that show. It's about 35 minutes. So it shouldn't take much time at all to check it out. All right, so we're going to take our first break and come back and play some speed trivia. Not to be confused with trivia about speed. It's not trivia about speed. It's speed trivia. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Lifeline Connections, providing a safe, confidential, and comfortable place for hope, help, and healing in the Pacific Northwest.
When I started receiving services at Lifeline Connections just over 6 years ago, I was so broken. I was homeless. I had a mental illness and a substance use disorder. By being able to treat my mental illness first, I was able to gain the tools that I needed to overcome my mental illness and to treat my addiction. Lifeline Connections has given me the hope and healing that I needed to get my life back in order. Today, I am proud to say that I'm a success.
To speak with an addiction specialist, call 360-397-8246 or visit lifelineconnections.org.
And now, it's the Quiz of the Week.
That's right, everybody. It's time for Take 12 Radio's Quiz of the Week, sponsored by that recovery magazine, the 12-Step Gazette. Visit their website at 12stepgazette.com. Now, here's the Monty'man.
That's right. All right, this week, I'm going to do a little review because we've been doing understanding the steps 1 through 12. And we're finishing up with understanding step 12 today and talking a little bit about this. Now, keep in mind that this whole series that we've done is in no way to replace doing a thorough working of the step process. We haven't even touched on everything. We haven't even begun to touch on everything on each step. We've just kind of highlighted some areas. So please don't use this show to replace that. That's not good advice. But we're just, this is a companion to that. And you can go back and download these shows and burn them to the CDs if you like. All right. So, Take 12 trivia this week, the quiz of the week, is going to be speed trivia. So that means we're going to try to go through this fast. We're going to try.
My brain don't work like that.
Mine doesn't either. I don't even know why I'm attempting this. But anyway, if you get it right, you're either going to hear this or this. If you get it wrong, of course, you get that. Are you ready? Are you ready? All right, number 1, the 12-step program can be used for A, many addictions, only alcohol, or only alcohol and drugs.
Many addictions.
Many addictions.
Yay. Number 2, what is one of the 4 absolutes? Humility, gratitude, or honesty?
Honesty.
Yes. Woo! Bill W. was a what by trade? Stockbroker, insurance
Stockbroker.
Yay. The first step uses the word power hungry, powerful, or powerless.
Powerless.
I like that. That's fun. I can't turn these fast enough. Turning it over is fundamentally the initial part of what step? Step 3, 9, or 4?
3.
Bruce?
3.
All right. Getting a sponsor should be done.
I almost didn't get that one.
Tricky. Getting a sponsor should be done, A, as soon as you begin step work, after your 3rd step, or as soon as you work on step 4.
Before you start working the steps.
There you go. Which step primarily involves making an inventory? 4, 3, or 6?
4.
4.
A self-inventory is good to do because A, you need to count your blessings. B, other people are to blame. Or C, you take a look at your past issues.
Take a look at your past
issues.
Yay. 12-step programs are originated over 100 years ago, 50 years ago, or 200 years ago.
I have no idea.
Well, it's not to 100 yet, so over
100.
Over 50.
Over 50. Eve is right. Bruce?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
It's only about 70 years old now.
70. Well, it was 75 like a while back, so
Yes.
it's got to be in the 80s now.
I knew that. So give me a horn, please.
Give me a horn.
All right.
Okay, holy men from 2 institutions were active early in the founding of the 12 steps. Here are your choices: Methodist and Catholic, Catholic and Jewish, or Episcopal and Catholic.
Episcopal and Catholic.
Yes. Bruce, I give it to you because you're too slow. Which movement had an influence on the 12 step? Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge.
Oxford.
Bruce.
Oxford.
All right. Discussing your wrongs with another person is a major part of which step?
5.
Yes. There you go.
That was just too many.
I think we deserve a trip to Hawaii after that.
That was
Yay. All right. We'll be back.
not one question about 12.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. All right. We'll be back.
Would you mind telling me what it was?
When we come back right after this. Hey there, it's the Monty'man from Take 12 Radio, and I'd like to tell you about one of our main sponsors here at the radio station, Therapia Addiction Healing Centers. They offer a family program that is designed to help family members learn about the family illness of addiction and begin on their own path to emotional healing. Therapia works with you, the family member, to explore your own emotional life and better understand what your loved one is going through while in treatment. Therapia recognizes what you have experienced can be extremely traumatic, and they are here to help. To begin your journey of healing today, visit their website at therapia.net
or call their toll-free number at 855-652-4325. Or click on the link here at Take12Radio.com.
Hey, it's Artie Kornfeld, and you're listening to Take 12 Radio, recovery talk, and positive music.
Kicks just keep getting harder to find, and all your kicks ain't bringing you peace of mind. Before you find out it's too late, girl, you better get straight.
But not with Kicks. Paul Revere
Yes.
and the Raiders. Kicks was a term back then describing drug use.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. And you're right, Bruce.
Getting my kicks.
Getting my kicks. You're right, Bruce. I did fail to ask that question. I thought I did. A deep understanding of the 12th step is found in what chapter of the big book? We agnostics, working with others, or two employers?
Yeah, working with others.
Yes. There. Now you got it. Okay. You were right. I was wrong this year.
Now we really deserve that trip to Hawaii.
And you really do. You really do. Zippity doo dah. All right, we'll put the gadgets away. Or one of them. All right, step 12. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. The original manuscript said having had a spiritual experience. I'm glad they changed it to awakening because there's a difference.
Yes, there is.
Lots of us had spiritual experiences galore. Dropping acid, jumping off of bridges, things like that. I remember jumping off of bridges while intoxicated.
Yeah.
I don't mean onto the concrete. I mean into the water.
They weren't sufficient to keep us sober, were they?
No, they weren't. They weren't. And so in the chapter, working with others is where this step really goes into detail, and it's actually quite lengthy. And so when I said don't replace this show with working this step, I meant it because for time's sake we don't have time to go through all this. But here's a challenge, and this was a challenge given to me by Chris S. Years ago. If you go through the 12th step and highlight or circle or make with a star or something every time there's a directive in the 12th step, it's an instruction on what to do. There's tons. It's just over and over. In fact, I think I have. I think there's like 57 in there that I marked. And the steps all have instructions, but I mean, it's over and over again. It's telling you to do something. This is definitely an action thing here. This isn't a decision. This isn't. I'm considering this. This is an action.
Yeah, this isn't writing.
No. And it starts out by saying practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. There's something in there that we need to assume, don't we, Bruce? That's true, assuming that the person working with the other alcoholic has had a spiritual awakening as a result of the first 1 through 11.
Yes.
You bet.
Yeah. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Again, this is not a book of suggestions. This is a suggested program of recovery as a whole package. It says, carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Interesting where he's telling us to remember. You would think we would know that by now. But we got a great forgetter.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me, we can shoot our wounded really easily. We have a tendency to be really hard on each other when the book tells us to be hard on ourselves. But it doesn't tell us to be that hard and dogmatic sometimes that we are with other people, right?
Yes. You hear it in meetings sometimes before a meeting starts, people be talking about so-and-so that relapsed or whatever. And the person, I told them they should get to a meeting and it's nothing to do with the steps. Right. It's as if somebody could just obey somebody's command to do something and that would take care of their drinking or using problem. Well, it's like they do forget, and I do too. I mean, we all forget where we came from, that sense of desperation and, an inability to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Bruce, your thoughts as we venture out on this Step 12 stuff?
I think I have to remember all the time that I'm not the one that's going to save these people.
Mm-hmm.
All I can do is pass this wonderful method along with the hope that they have a relationship with God, and that He'll save them too.
Mm-hmm.
See, because that's what it's about. It's not about the steps. It's not about, the sponsor. It's about this spiritual awakening, this conscious contact with God that He does for us what we can't do for ourselves. There's a thing in To the Wise we were reading the other day. It's on the next to the last page about either God has removed the problem or He hasn't. So if a person was to relapse, it's better to know, because now we can redouble our efforts and go back and do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You see, maybe now his heart will be changed, because I believe through that process, God will do that. See, so we're asking people to do things and to knock things off that maybe they're not capable of doing.
Yes.
And that's what we have to remember, where we came from. We couldn't.
Yes. Another thing that came to my mind is, the very first part of Step 12 said, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we carried this message to others. I think the spiritual awakening, that the key or the foundation of that awakening is humility. Because I think that if you finish the steps and you think, I've done it, now I can go help others, then that spiritual awakening is not really there, because that all the humility that it takes as you're working through those steps, right. I believe that that's the spiritual awakening, a recognition that God is on the throne and we're not. Like what Bruce just said, going into it not thinking that I can help anybody, but God can. And it's the submission to Him and that way of approaching others with humility that I think is when we're ready.
I absolutely agree. The steps on page 13 in Bill's story it talks, the open-mindedness is really humility. See, if you're open-minded, you're open to the fact that you can't do this. And that's a humbling process that we go through. So I absolutely agree with you that that's what takes place, and that's the new attitude that we go to Him with. I don't think God refuses a contrite heart.
Well, we know He doesn't. That's in the Word of God.
Yeah, He resists the prideful and raises the humble.
Is it possible to turn you guys down there a little bit? Is it possible to go through the motions of, and hear me, listeners, how I say this, to go through the motions of applying the principles in these steps, to go through the book with a sponsor, to do everything it says in action, and not have a spiritual awakening as a result of them?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because I think that to just become aware of spiritual principles is a spiritual awakening in itself, and realizing that they're something that if you applied in your life would probably get better. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a huge difference in being aware of that and having that happen and being reborn.
Okay.
If you actually do the steps and you get a personal relationship with God, how do I want to say it? It's going to transform your life. You're not going to change. See, I believe you'll change if you work the principles, because they don't change, and your life will be different.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll transform your life if you get a relationship with God.
What do you think, Eve? Can you go through the motions of this thing, follow the directions, and maybe miss something?
Well, my own personal experience says yes.
Yeah, me too.
The first time I worked through the steps, I was transformed to a place that I've never returned to being otherwise, and that was that whole victim stuff. I used to have that victim mentality.
Right.
And I was relieved of that. I was relieved of that bondage of self, because that is a bondage of self. But the last time I went through the steps with my sponsor, it was step 3 where I had a spiritual awakening. And it was when we were doing the 3rd step prayer. And I shared this when we were talking about the 3rd step. You know, she asked me, do you want to do this, or do you feel, because, you know, I was involved with church, and I was actually going for my master's in spiritual formation.
Right.
And so she was asking me a question like, do you even want to do this? And I said, and I believe it was the Holy Spirit that was impressing upon me, I want you to do this. And I said yes. And I couldn't even get through the first half of it before I started crying about helping others, that we do this because it's to do His will and not our own. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, the blinders came off again. About it was another removal of self. It was like, this life isn't about me at all. It's not about me at all. And that ties in so much with later on with step 12, because I believe that service work, I believe that, you know, it is in the big book. It's related to alcoholism, and it says nothing so ensures our staying sober than this intense work with other alcoholics. But I really believe that service, period, giving of ourselves, laying down our own lives for the sake of others, is a spiritual principle that sets us in a place with God that we're protected in a lot of ways. And we have joy with a capital J. We can find happiness in this world in a lot of ways, but joy comes through obedience to God, period.
Amen.
See, not only do I agree with that, you know what I mean, but as I was learning to pray and talk to God about this altruistic movement, and I started to learn that what I really wanted from God was the humility, for He could work in and through me. So I had to humble myself under His mighty hand. See, and I thought God was going to do that. I didn't know that I could do that. And then He could work in and through me. And I asked God today, would you help me to put my stuff aside, for I can think of Him and what would be best for Him. Mm-hmm. You see, if I put the other person ahead of myself, I can't do that. I don't have the capacity or the desire without God. You know, I want to do it because I look good. I want to do it to stay sober. I'm not doing it because it's the proper thing to do. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not doing it out of gratitude because of what God has done for me. So I ask Him to help me set my stuff aside.
Yes.
See, that I might work with this man.
And how often do you need to do that?
All the time.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Every day.
That's right. Yeah. I can lay down self and pick up His cross, and an hour later be all back wrapped up in Eve again. It's a fleshly struggle on this earth. It's never going to go away, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I agreed. And I think, there's a lot of stuff in this step in the book. There's talking about, leaving your copy of the book, with the person. They're talking about the first visit. They talk about the second visit. They talk about working with the family and the whole 9 yards. And I really encourage anybody that's that's listening to this show, this is the first time maybe, to read the whole chapter and get into it. We're not going to get into all that stuff. I think the thing I really want to emphasize about this is the question I had about, can you go through this whole thing and miss it? And I think there's a lot of people out there that have gone through, they believe they've applied and implemented steps 1 through 11 to the best of their ability, and they may have to the best of their ability, to the power, to the degree they had power. But if proper humility, if a contrite heart isn't being developed through this process, you're just going through this process.
Yes.
And the rooms are filled with people that are teaching this stuff, that have read it, that have written down what they're supposed to write down, but they haven't surrendered. They've surrendered to the process, but not to the one who these steps are pointing to. Mm-hmm. And then they go, it didn't work.
The minute we put ourselves out there on a service plane, the sponsee automatically starts to rely upon us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we don't want that to happen.
And if we don't have any sense of who we are in relationship to God, our flesh will desire that.
Sure it will.
So, yeah, it's if you don't guard against that and set that sponsee straight, just kind of indoctrinate them in the idea that it's not me. It's the higher power. It's God.
Yeah. See, I talk all the time about meetings, and because that's the big thing. We'll send you to a meeting, go to meetings the rest of your life, and that implies certain things, you see.
Yes,
but
it does.
You don't think that I don't become meeting reliant?
Or you're told to. You're told to be meeting reliant.
Well, I mean, you don't think, even with me, with being through the steps.
Oh, sure.
That if I'm not trusting in God and growing in my walk with Him, if I'm not spiritually feeding myself, I automatically start to shift to something else. Most of the time, it's me.
Yes.
But I could be relying upon the meetings. I could be relying upon the people. You see what I mean?
That's right.
There's many things that are maybe the combinations of these things. So I think
we might be relying on church or our pastor or a therapist. There's a lot of things that we can turn to.
Exactly. So I have to be keenly aware that I'm spiritually alive. I've been awakened.
Mm-hmm.
And now I want to learn to live out of that instead of out of this self-centered center. See, I used to be selfish to the core. Yes. That was what I lived out of that. Now I want to live out of this spiritual life. And the spiritual life will have everything to do with my beliefs.
Yeah.
Then my beliefs will have everything to do with my values. And my values will have everything to do with my conduct. So I'm changing from the inside out. But everybody else wants me to go to this outside of this circle and work on this conduct. See, and maybe I can't change it because of the center of who I am.
Yes.
Okay, that's why I'm to feed the spiritual side and to have it grow. And there's many methods by which that takes place. And I've learned one, and it worked for me, and I try to teach others, what that's about. And it's about taking an honest look at yourself with God's help, for you can go to Him with a different attitude and not, a plea bargain.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this attitude within our fellowships, not just AA and NA, but other 12-step fellowships as well. Many times, that says, you know what, you can sponsor somebody before you ever complete this 12-step process. I really take issue with that, and because it's like trying to teach somebody how to fly a plane and you haven't even been through ground school yet. You're giving the guys a key to an aircraft and he's going to crash. Mm-hmm. You have not adequately learned. You haven't been trained. You haven't applied the principles through this whole thing, and you're trying to teach somebody else. Now, some people will argue and say, well, you can work with others as long as you're a step ahead of them. Well, that's a very dangerous place to be, because life happens, worldly clamors happens, and you can fall behind. I mean, it's just not.
You think he can do the exact same thing you did, and that's going to do it for you?
Right, and that is
just because you get the results of something doesn't mean he is.
Yeah.
the same result. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Like, go have a stern talk with your wife. Leave her. It's crazy things people tell.
There's a really strong instruction in here that you're not going to read until you get to this part. You're not going to know it. You may figure it out, but it's not actually spelled out in the book until you get to this part. So at the bottom of page 99, it says, remind the prospect, we're talking about the newcomer, we're talking about the person who is prospectively going to sit down and work the steps with you, that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. You're reminding him that when he's still a prospect. So people say, well, don't talk about God when they're new. This says you do. You talk, whether he believes in God, does not believe in God, whatever it is, you are to remind him right off the bat, you're not to be dependent on me. It's not dependent on people. That's either me or a meeting of people. It's dependent on your relationship with God. And you're not going to know that until you've gotten to this place. So really, I'm sorry, but I'm very dogmatic about this. If you have not done this process, if you have not had a spiritual awakening as a result of this process, if you don't have a relationship with the Creator, you have no business sponsoring anybody. I'm real adamant about that. Now listen to this. Yes, indeed. If he says yes, if the person that you've approached, and by the way, we're making the approach. We're not waiting for them to come to us. Then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has what?
Recovered.
Recovered. Not to a person who's in recovery. Sorry. If you haven't recovered, you haven't done and applied this process. The reason you feel that you're always in recovery is because you haven't experienced recovered yet. You're right. You haven't recovered. Because once you have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, you know it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, that alcohol never appeals to me.
Right.
You know, people say, well, I get the thought every once in a while. I can get the thought, and my mind is sane in its thinking in regards to alcohol. I look at it and I know it's poison for me.
Yeah.
That never happened before I worked those steps and had a spiritual awakening, a spiritual transformation as a result of God working in my life and doing that for me. I could never figure that out. I tried to think. Tried to figure it out.
Think.
Yeah.
If I still had the obsession or the idea in my head that I wanted to drink, or what would it take, or, you know, I couldn't go down the aisle of the supermarket because that's where the booze was. Well, I just drink. I don't think that would be it. That's exactly what I did before. I'd walk down the aisle one day, and the next day I'd pick some up. You see?
Yep.
And see, that's the obsession. It doesn't conform, you know, to reason. So I don't care what it is you're thinking.
Right.
That crazy little weird thought that this time it'll be different.
Yeah.
You know, wins out. See, that's the obsession. I haven't had that for years. Absolutely years. That's what I've been relieved of.
Yes.
And now that I'm taking pills for pain, I do, and I am aware that there's this craving that comes up. Well, if that worked, maybe I could take 2 of them, and I'd feel a little better, and I could sleep tonight. See? But I'm aware of that. Now, I don't go nuts over it, and I don't think that or anything else like that. I quietly sit down and ask God for the strength to get through this and not to take any pills, to give me rest in Him, for I could, you know, stop thinking about this. And every single time He has taken me through that, and He has allowed me to not take them for 4 or 5 days.
Yes.
No matter even if there's pain, you know, to just forget about it. Just not think about it and go about my way, but then the day will come when I have to take it again, and he's always there.
Yes.
Here's another touchy subject in this step. It says, assuming we are spiritually fit, that's a huge assumption. Again, if you haven't done this process and if you haven't been woken up by the Spirit of the living God and you don't have a relationship with God and you're not spiritually fit, then please don't even consider the next statements, because you need to be spiritually fit. This is assuming you are spiritually fit. And by the way, if you were spiritually fit yesterday, doesn't mean you're spiritually fit today.
Yes,
we talked about that.
I would just underscore that a million times.
Yeah, a million times. You bet. We can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What this is getting ready to do is not give you license to go do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it, no matter who you're around. We're talking about working with others here. Keep it in the context, folks. They were going out pulling people off bar stools that would otherwise be dead.
That's right.
They were telling you, look at, if you're spiritually fit, you can go as a team. You can go on a 12-step call. You can do this stuff if you've got business being there. This is not a license to go play poker in Tahoe. I'm sorry, it's not. You may be able to do that, but this is not a license. I'm not going to say you can't or can't. I'm just saying this is not a license that gives you permission to do that. It's not what it's talking about. It says, some people say we must not have liquor in our homes. By the way, many of these guys back then, they carried a flask of whiskey in their glove box.
That's right, to keep somebody from
dying. Yeah, they would put sheets of plastic and blankets in their back seats because these guys would be throwing up half the time.
Yeah.
We must. Some people say we must shun our friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures, which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their homes. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Well, if you're going to work with others, you're going to be reminded about alcohol a lot. It's going to be in your face. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so. So there are exceptions.
I do not put myself in positions to be around intravenous drug users. You know what I mean? To be in their homes and they're using and those type of things.
Yes.
But that kind of stuff doesn't frighten me, and I can go to those places. You know, and that's what I think they're talking about here.
Yeah. Well,
you know? And we don't hide it.
No. And listen to this. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. That suggests that there's a place where we don't have an alcoholic mind anymore.
The obsession.
Right. The obsession is gone. If they can't, the obsession is still there. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. So that tells me they probably haven't done this. So if you're out there, this is, again, saying you can't be sponsoring people or going on 12-step calls by yourself, pulling people off bar stools and out of shooting galleries, and you haven't even done step 4. I mean, come on. This is explaining that very clearly. I don't think there's any confusion here at all. Now, can you go on a 12-step call with somebody who's experienced? Yeah, you could do that. You know, that could be, but even very early, that may be caution for you. I believe people can be set free from triggers, and I'm not a big trigger guy, but I do know that when there is co-occurring mental health issues, sometimes triggers are real.
Yes.
And you have to use wisdom. You just do. And you're not going to gain wisdom if you've never done this. If you've never followed directions, you're just going to be kind of you know.
Or like me, you might be wondering what's wrong with me. Why is this bothering me still?
Yeah,
right.
That's exactly right. You know.
So working with other people is, and Bruce, what's that? I would quote you, but I'll get it wrong about finding out about yourself when nothing will.
Oh, working with another alcoholic. If you want to find out about your defects, go work with another alcoholic.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And it talks about how you and that person you're working with, needs to continue on this spiritual path. Not just him or her, but you too. You have to.
There's a man named Vernon McGee that I listened to quite a bit when I first was doing this thing to learn what this was all about, and we talk about humility as something to be desired, to be open-minded to God, to know that you need his help.
Yes.
And so to go with him with that kind of a heart. Okay? Well, the opposite of that is pride.
Mm-hmm.
And listen to what Vernon McGee said about pride. He said, pride is nothing more than an attitude that declares your ability to live without God.
Yeah.
See, and I believe
love
that with all my heart. And people say, get a little pride in yourself. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off and move forward, defense. And that's the way we've learned. But it's about humility.
Yeah.
About being humble. About learning to set your stuff aside for the betterment of another human being. This is an altruistic movement. It's not a selfish program. And people believe that because they haven't finished the steps, because they can't do a step 12. It's done improperly. And once you teach somebody something and that gets in their mind and they adopt it, that becomes their thought. Now you've got to work through this person and with this person with the hope that you can get past that.
Mm-hmm.
We can't always get past those things. People want to hang on to them. We're defiant and stubborn individuals. I'm not letting go of this.
Yeah, God, you can have every part of me, but don't go into this room of my heart.
I can't.
That's mine. Yeah.
Well, you'd have to admit you was wrong. Or you believe something. And I'm going to tell you, I sit in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I hear things, and it sounds good to my ears. And I actually have told myself, I wish that was true, but I know it's not. Because it sounds good, see, to the ear gate. It really, it's, it's a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, and the one that really upsets me, and it I don't know why, but it just does. 90 meetings in 90 days. Who in the world said we had 90 days?
Yeah, what makes you think that the poor guy's got even another day left in his life? So just go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and then we'll talk about working the steps. You may be guilty of signing a guy's death warrant.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. There.
I wonder what Silkworth would have done with that.
Oh, jeez.
So just so you know, if you're listening and you haven't read the book yet, that's the very first part of the book is Dr. Silkworth's input.
Gee, well, listen, before we close today with Ray White's song from his CD, Eve isn't going to be here next week. And
Not next week.
You may be on the phone.
Well,
we'll see.
I won't be on the phone even next week because I'm going to be traveling to the airport to go down.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And tell listeners what you're up to.
Well, I'm going down to Long Beach, and this is kind of an interesting thing. If you've heard any part of my story, my father was extremely abusive to me, and I even promised my mother when she was dying that I would never care for my father. However, God has different plans, and he made it clear to me in January while I was on a plane coming home from seeing my dad that I was overwhelmed with love and compassion for him, and I sensed the Spirit was saying, "You're going back." And so I was waiting, and the time came. I was having trouble getting a hold of my dad, and finally he did answer the phone, and he's not well, and he said, "I'm dying, and your cousins are flying in." So my father has CTE, which if you've seen the movie Concussion, that's what that's all about, and it's a very miserable way to go. But I'm going in the Lord's strength, and also I would appreciate the listeners to be praying for me that I only do what God is asking me to do here, because there's a lot of trauma in my life as a result of this man, and yet I do love him.
Yeah.
I believe that God's love has filled me for my Father. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing, and I don't know how long I'll be gone. I'm going to try and do the radio show via phone when I can.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about working with others.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, be careful who you have a resentment towards. You may end up, you know, emptying their bedpan or being their sponsor, or they may end up sponsoring you. I mean, you know, and look at this.
Yes.
Complete, you know, what the locusts have eaten, God restores, and wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
See, you won't know this, and you won't experience this unless you see. It's God that shows us to have the kind of relationships that we've craved our whole lives.
Yes.
He's the one that builds this fellowship up around us. Oh, that testimony you just gave. I mean, it just, my hair stood up at the back of my neck because I think I know what she's talking about. To have a love for somebody that, in normal circumstances, what we think is normal would be absolutely insane. I cried for another man. I'm not gay or any of those things, but I cried and cried and cried because I knew he was lost. And I couldn't reach him. Now, what's that all about?
That's about the power of God living in and through us, brother. That's what that is.
See, that's nuts.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Eve.
Yes, and the scriptures do tell us that his ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts. Another thing that, another scripture that's been helping me is that his word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And I got a visual of that and thought about when we carry a lamp, like a lantern, that it only does light up the few feet that's right in front of us. We don't know what's beyond that.
Yeah.
But we can trust in a God that has us and has plans for us and wants us to be safe and okay.
And I think we give those analogies and we believe them because he's taken us from the darkness.
He has.
To the light. So,
Yeah.
That's
wonderful stuff.
I'll say no more. I just am overwhelmed with what's the testimony.
It's marvelous stuff. Well, listen, next week, we're going to put a little bow on this series of understanding the 12 steps by talking about step 13. It's not found in the book. It's not an original thought.
I'm buying a Bluetooth. I'll be calling you from my car.
It's not an original thought. I thought about doing this by listening to our friends Mark, Bruce, and Shelley over at Recovery 101 down in Laguna Beach, Southern California, on their show. By the way, you can go to their show by clicking on the link Recovery 101 at take12radio.com. And they've done, they've done the step thing too, and they've added step 13 in there. They haven't done it yet again this time, but I think we're going to beat them to the punch. But our shows are two different kind of shows, and they're just a hoot. But I thought, that's good. That's a good idea. Let's talk about step 13. And if you want to know what that's all about, well, you're going to have to wait till next week. Some of you can imagine. And we'll be talking about that. And Bruce will be here and I will be here. And maybe somebody else. I don't know yet. We'll have to see. But we'll be talking about that. All right. So, Ray White. Now, we haven't played all the songs on his CD through this series because we don't want to give them all away. If you'd like a copy of this CD, Learning to Live Again, all you have to do is go to take12radio.com and donate. Click at the very bottom of the page where it says donate. Donate $11, no more, no less. That way I'll know it's a CD, and I will send you a copy of Ray's CD, Learning to Live Again. This song by Ray White is entitled The Journey. Listen, many thanks to you, Ray, for donating these CDs to us to help support the show and keep us on the air. Folks, until our next broadcast, check this song out. Ray White's The Journey.
looking back on yesterday, trying to find a better way to go. But I don't know. The road that brought me here had a lot of turns along the way, but that's okay. When you feel like a traveler at the station, searching for some unknown destination, just remember the living's in the learning, and it's not a destination, it's a journey. Wasted so much time trying to find a place you just can't go. And now I know it doesn't matter anyhow. The place you're looking for is right now, here and now. So when you feel like a traveler at the station, searching for some unknown destination, just remember the living's in the learning, and it's not a destination, it's a journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey.
All right, my friends, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man. Please keep Eve in your prayers as she travels, along with Eve and Bruce, and we're wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.